Hi, this is Ben Baxter with Accent Software. Today I want to run through the routing capabilities within Microsoft Business Central. I'm not going to step through the full production process. I do have another video that will step through how a production order works. Today we're going to just talk about the back end side of routings. So half of the production process, the other part being production bombs. So to do that, I am in a profile specific to manufacturing. So you do want to switch to Manufacturing Manager if you want to follow along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the menu choice that says Product Design. You can also use the magnifying glass if you want to do a search for this from a different profile. But I'm going to switch over to what's called routings. And so the routings is where I define the structure or the sequence of events that happen in a production process. So I'm going to go to the one for auto drip. This is just a demo environment. I would say in general, we're going to see a one-to-one relationship between the routing and the finished good product or the subassembly that is being produced. One of the first things you'll notice is a type. And there's two choices, serial and parallel. For this example, we'll talk about serial. I am in status certified, which means I can't make changes to this, which also means that when I use this production routing in a production order, it will pull over the information, where if it is in the under development or new status or even closed where it's not going to be used anymore, it would not pull over to a production order. So you do want to make sure you're in certified status if the production router is ready to use. So the way the structure works is down here on the lines, you have the ability to enter in operation numbers. I always start simple, 10, 20, 30, 40. You're not gonna have a ton of these. If you have a very complex process, you should probably talk to your partner or Accent Software to understand more about what that structure might look like. You then decide the type. Now in this case, I have work centers and machine centers defined. The difference being a work center is a group of machines and I can select any specific machine within that group. When I list a machine center on the line, it means that machine and that machine alone is able to complete that specific operation or step within the production process. So you do want to be careful here. This can create some bottlenecks when you use a machine center. There are capabilities in some ISV products around scheduling that make this easier, where this doesn't become a bottleneck and you can set up some alternative routes. But for right now, just understand that work center is what the majority of people are going to use to keep it where the machines within the group are equal, and I can select any of them to complete the body assembly in this example. Next up, you're going to see the routing link code. In this case, I have some blanks, which is totally okay. You do not have to use routing link codes. And then on my electrical wiring, I have one set. What that means is I have the ability now to link specific material in my bill of material to this operation 20 for the electrical wiring. Any material for the other two steps will be consumed at the end of the production process when this production order is finished. I'll actually have a separate video specifically on routing link codes so you can see that in action. The body assembly will have different time components that are required to complete it. So I've sequenced my columns. I would suggest you do something similar to this, which is move time first, then setup time, then run time, and then wait time. So it goes in that order, so I recommend you move your columns to be in that sequence. Move time would be like grabbing material, or if I have to pick it up with a fork truck and move it to a facility. That would be a non-cost adding time. Some people ignore this completely and just build it into their setup time for the operation, and that way there's cost allocated for it. Setup time is a fixed time. So this is your turnover time. If I have to spray out a paint booth, if I have to set a temperature on plastic injection molding or something like that, and you have to let it warm up, or you have to clean out or change over a machine, that's your setup time. It's a fixed amount of time per operation. Now, you're setting it as fixed, meaning it's not based on how many you're producing. It just happens one time regardless of the quantity. It's still variable, so you may have a setup time that says 90 minutes to complete the setup, and they may get it done in 80 minutes, and you can record 80 minutes of setup time. Or you could record 115 minutes of setup time. That's okay too. Now I'm mentioning minutes. I do have the unit of measure code visible on my lines where normally it is hidden. I have mine set up to be defaulted to minutes. You may use hours. We have seen in the production environments that we deploy, majority of time it's recorded in minutes so that you can be very specific with your increments of time. Next, we'll jump over to runtime. Runtime is the variable amount. It is an amount of time times the number of units that you are going to produce. If I have a machine and it spits out parts every 3 minutes, well then my runtime is 3 minutes. If I'm producing 100 parts, that's 300 minutes. I don't enter 300 minutes, I enter the cycle time or the amount of time required per part produced. Then there's wait time. So wait time is very similar to move and setup time where it's fixed. It's not based on the number of units produced. So those are your sequence of times. They do have an impact as you get into the production process where we introduce items and quantities. But for right now, you just need to understand how those are calculated. So I'm going to scroll over to the right. And we're going to look at some other factors that you can use. These are all optional. The first one is fixed scrap quantity. This one matters a lot when you talk about a machine that is going to scrap a part at the end, or if you have an item that you're going to scrap as part of a QC process. You may want to build that in here. So you have to build the full unit within that operation, but then you're going to scrap it as part of the QC, maybe destruction testing process or something like that. And so I can build in a scrap quantity, which will have an impact on the bill of materials. And that's where that routing link code that we'll talk about in other videos comes into play, so that you can make sure all of the material needed for this operation gets a scrap amount added. Okay, now this is a scrap quantity, so it's a fixed amount. You can also do a scrap factor being a percent, and the percent would then be if I needed 10 and I have a 10% scrap factor, I'm going to need 1 extra unit. If I had a 20% scrap factor, I'm going to need 2 extra units. So it's not based on a fixed quantity, it's based on an amount of what's being used. So those are your 2 scrap options. We don't see them used here as much on the routing as we do on the production BOM. We have a full another video on production BOMs, so check that one out. But the scrap factors here would impact all your bill of material linked to that specific operation. Concurrent capacities is one that we see heavily underutilized or misunderstood within the software. Concurrent capacities are typically assigned on the work center or the machine center, and it defines how many operations can run through that work center at one time. This is defining how much of that capacity you are consuming. So if I have a work center that can run 2 production orders at one time, but this particular production order uses up both, then I'm going to change this concurrent capacity to 2. And that way when it gets to that machine, I can't slot 2 production orders on it because this one is going to use up that entire machine. So it's not that I'm producing more units at a single time, it's that I'm using up more of that concurrent capacity of the work center the production order is passing through. Next up is going to be lot size. This is again another one that probably goes underutilized, especially in environments where you have multi-cavity molds or your ability to produce more units at one time. In the lot sizing, if I have the ability to, let's say I have a mold that has 4 cavities in it. So when that injection press runs through and injects the plastic or resin into that mold, I output 4 units. My lot size is going to be 4. So this is great for mold-based businesses where I'm producing more than 1 unit per cycle time. Now, if I'm not in that kind of business and I only produce 1 unit at a time in sequence, then this lot size just remains 0 or blank as the default, and I don't even worry about it. Next up is the send ahead quantity. This is a field that is kind of a mixed bag in terms of some people use it well, and as they're producing out of the first operation, they're going to send ahead some product and start working on the next operation. I've seen it misused, causing bottlenecks, because what happens is they have a send ahead quantity that's too high, and before they complete this operation, this one has stocked out. So they've started using operation 20 with that send ahead quantity, but this operation doesn't finish fast enough to keep this one busy, and so that machine stops being able to produce goods. And so now we have a machine that's in process, it's set up, it's waiting for parts, but because I had a send ahead quantity that didn't make sense, now all of a sudden that machine is just sitting there wasting time, and I may have people sitting around waiting because the parts aren't available to actually run on that machine. All right, last field, unit cost per. This comes in more when I'm using the subcontracting and I want to set a very specific unit cost. So instead of using the machine center or work center's costing and how that gets calculated, I'm going to set a unit cost per on my work center. And oftentimes this gets into like subcontractors that are doing a per piece rate. And so this is where I can factor that in and define that on my routing. Now this is all for serial routings. So there will be a second video on parallel routings and what that entails to mirror this kind of environment, but where things happen simultaneously. So we'll cover that in a second video. If you have questions over serial routings, how to set them up, how to make manufacturing work better for your business, or how Business Central can be applied to your business, we'd love it if you'd reach out to the Accent Software support team. We'd love to answer your questions and help you better utilize your software or look at a new software package to better impact your business.